Hey babe, caught 3 fish today. The solitude is really helping clear my mind. I stared at Nathan's text message, then at the photo on my screen showing him lounging at a beachfront bar in Punta Cana, his arm draped around his secretary. The timestamp read, 2 minutes ago. That's wonderful, honey, I typed back, my fingers steady despite the rage building inside me. I'm so glad you're finding peace in nature. My name is Liana Thompson, and until 10 minutes ago, I thought I had a solid marriage. But then my colleague Rachel rushed into my office at our law firm in Denver, her face flushed with concern. You need to see this, she'd said, pulling up Brianna Moore's Facebook page. There was my husband of 8 years, supposedly on a wilderness retreat to detox from work stress, living it up at a luxury resort with his 20-something secretary. I kept scrolling through the photos. Sunset walks on the beach, candle-lit dinners, stolen kisses by the pool. Each one time-stamped and tagged with nauseating captions like, "Finally with my true love," and "No more hiding." The irony of their carelessness almost made me laugh. "Oh my God, Liana, I'm so sorry," Rachel whispered, reaching for my hand. "What are you going to do?" I closed my laptop slowly, years of courtroom experience keeping my expression neutral. Nathan had no idea that his perfectly planned camping trip was crumbling because his mistress couldn't resist posting their romantic getaway on social media. He had no idea that while he sipped cocktails and betrayed our marriage, he'd given me everything I needed to destroy him. "First," I said, pulling out a legal pad, "I'm going to text my darling husband and ask if the fish are biting." I sent another message. "Miss you so much. Can't wait to hear all about your wilderness adventures." Rachel watched me, confusion clear on her face. "Shouldn't you confront him?" I smiled, remembering every case I'd won by letting my opponents think they had the upper hand. As a corporate attorney, I'd learned that the element of surprise was often the most powerful weapon in my arsenal. Nathan thought he was so clever with his camping story, never considering that his mistress's social media addiction would be his downfall. "Do you know what's better than catching him in a lie?" I asked Rachel, already drafting notes on my legal pad. "Letting him keep lying while I dismantle his entire life." Nathan and I met at Stanford Law School. He was charming, ambitious, and seemed to share my values of hard work and dedication. While other couples in our class drifted apart under the pressure of grueling study schedules and competitive internships, we grew stronger. At least, that's what I thought. After graduation, I turned down an offer from a prestigious firm in New York to stay in Denver with Nathan. He'd landed a position at Morrison & Webster, one of the city's top investment firms, and I didn't want us to start our marriage with a long-distance relationship. "You're making the right choice," he'd said. "We're a team." I found my own success at Lambert & Cole, quickly rising through the ranks to become their youngest corporate attorney. Nathan seemed proud of my achievements, though looking back, I noticed how his smile would tighten whenever clients specifically requested me for their cases. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but whose is? When tensions rose, we dealt with them like lawyers, negotiating, compromising, finding middle ground. Then Brianna arrived at his firm 6 months ago. Young, attractive, and apparently very good at her job, according to Nathan's frequent mentions. "She's so efficient," he'd say. "Finally, a secretary who can keep up with my schedule." I ignored the warning bells. After all, I trusted my husband. Rachel's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Remember when he missed your anniversary dinner last month? Said he had to work late?" I pulled up Brianna's Facebook page again, scrolling back through her timeline. There it was, a check-in at Barolo Grill, the same night. The caption read, "Late night at the office never felt so good." "I can't believe I was so blind," I muttered, but Rachel shook her head. "You weren't blind, Liana. You were trusting. There's a difference." I thought about all the other signs I'd dismissed. The new gym membership he never used. The sudden interest in work conferences out of state. The passwords changed on his phone and laptop. Classic signs I'd seen in countless divorce cases I'd handled. Yet I'd convinced myself our marriage was different. You know what the worst part is? I said, pulling up our joint account records. He's using our money to finance their little romance. Rachel's eyes widened as I showed her the recent transactions. First-class tickets to Punta Cana, a 5-star resort? Yes, I replied, already drafting an email to my bank. But not for long. I spent the next hour methodically documenting every suspicious transaction from our joint accounts. Living room forgotten, dinner growing cold, none of it mattered as I built my case. The evidence was damning. Expenses for jewelry I'd never received, dinners at restaurants I'd never visited, hotel charges in cities where Nathan had claimed to be meeting clients. Look at this, I said to Rachel, pointing at my screen. He booked their Punta Cana trip 3 months ago. This wasn't spontaneous. He's been planning it. But why tell you he was going camping? Why not just say it was another business trip? I was about to respond when my phone buzzed with another text from Nathan. This time, he'd sent a photo, a generic camping scene clearly pulled from the internet, showing a tent pitched by a lake. Home sweet home, his message read. The stars are amazing out here. My hands started shaking, not from sadness, but from pure, cold rage. 8 years of marriage, and he couldn't even be bothered to find a convincing photo to support his lie. I opened my email and found what I was looking for. Nathan's firm's employee handbook sent to me months ago when I'd helped review some contracts for them. Right there, in bold text. Relationships between supervisors and direct reports are strictly prohibited and will result in immediate termination. Rachel, I said slowly, did you know Brianna has been documenting their entire relationship on Instagram too? We pulled up her profile. It was a goldmine. Months of subtle photos, each one damning in its own way. Coffee cups with Nathan's name visible, his watch in the corner of dinner photos, even a selfie in his office after hours, her perched on his desk while he smiled up at her. It gets worse, Rachel said, her voice tight. She'd been digging deeper into the financial records I'd pulled up. Look at these transfers. My stomach dropped as I saw what she'd found. Nathan hadn't just been spending our joint money on his affair. He'd been moving substantial sums into a private account for months, an account I knew nothing about. $90,000, I whispered, staring at the total. He's been hiding money. That's more than just affair money, Rachel said carefully. That looks like exit strategy money, I finished. He's been planning to leave me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just an affair, it was a calculated plan. While I'd been building our life together, he'd been planning his escape with a younger woman, systematically hiding assets and preparing to blindside me. I stood up, my decision made. Rachel, I need a favor. Can you cover my meetings for the rest of the week? Of course, she said. What are you going to do? I picked up my phone, composing another sweet text to my husband about how much I missed him. I'm going to make him wish he'd never learned how to lie. The next morning, I walked into Harriman Credit Union as soon as they opened. The manager, recognizing me from the corporate accounts I handled, immediately ushered me into his office. Mrs. Thompson, what brings you in so early? I need to discuss some suspicious activity on my joint accounts, I said, sliding across printouts of Nathan's transfers. I believe my husband has been moving money without my knowledge or consent. Within an hour, I had frozen our joint accounts and transferred my personal assets to a new, secure account. Nathan wouldn't discover this until he tried to access the money, likely when it was time to pay for his romantic getaway. Back at my office, I began phase 2. I called Nathan's firm's HR director, Susan Mills, an old client of mine. Susan, I need to discuss a sensitive matter, I began. It's about Nathan and his secretary. Brianna Moore? Susan's voice sharpened. What about them? I forwarded her a carefully curated selection of Brianna's social media posts. I believe this violates your firm's policies on supervisor-subordinate relationships. The silence on the other end was telling. I'll need to escalate this immediately, Susan finally said. This is extremely concerning. I understand, I replied, keeping my voice professional. I just thought you should be aware. Next, I called our locksmith. Being the one who handled all our home maintenance had its advantages. Nathan had never bothered to learn any of these details. Yes, I need an urgent replacement of all locks. Today, if possible. While waiting for the locksmith, I began packing Nathan's belongings. Each designer suit, each expensive tie, each monogrammed shirt went into heavy-duty garbage bags. 8 years of marriage reduced to black plastic sacks on our pristine driveway. My phone buzzed. Another text from Nathan. Missing you. Can't wait to tell you all about my adventures. I smiled, typing back. Miss you too. Hey, quick question. Did you remember to pay the credit card bill before you left? His response came quickly. Of course, honey. Don't worry about anything. Another lie. I knew he hadn't paid it because I was looking at the overdue notice right now. He'd been too busy planning his getaway to handle basic responsibilities. Rachel called around noon. Liana, you need to see this. Brianna just posted again. I pulled up Facebook. There was my husband, raising a champagne glass on a sunset cruise. The caption read, Living my best life with my soulmate. No more hiding. No more hiding indeed, I murmured, forwarding the photo to Susan at HR. The locksmith arrived just as I received an email from my divorce attorney confirming she'd filed the paperwork. Everything was falling into place. Then my phone rang. Nathan's boss, James Morrison himself. Liana, he said, his voice grave. I assume you know why I'm calling? I can guess. We had no idea. He's been embezzling client funds to finance this affair. The photos triggered an internal audit. It's bad. I closed my eyes, processing this new information. How bad? Criminal charges bad. We're filing a police report. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of vindication and nausea. I hadn't expected this level of betrayal, but it only confirmed I was doing the right thing. Looking at the garbage bags on the driveway, I added one final touch. A note taped to the top bag. Hope the camping trip was worth it. Don't forget to post pictures. I was reviewing the final draft of my divorce filing when my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. Something made me answer. Is this Liana Thompson? A woman's voice, unfamiliar and nervous. Yes, who is this? My name is Sarah. I was Brianna's roommate until last month. There's something you need to know. My heart started racing. I'm listening. This isn't the first time they've done this, Sarah said. Brianna, she and Nathan, they've pulled this scheme before, at his last firm. I sat down heavily in my office chair. What scheme? They target wealthy executives, get compromising photos, then threaten to expose everything unless they're paid off. But this time was different. Brianna actually fell for Nathan. She broke their pattern, started posting everything online. He's furious. The room seemed to spin. I thought of the money Nathan had been moving, the client funds he'd been embezzling. This wasn't just an affair. It was an elaborate con that had spiraled out of control. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because Brianna called me crying last night. Nathan's threatening to pin everything on her. She's terrified. I hung up and immediately called James Morrison back. James, we need to talk. This goes deeper than you think. Within an hour, I was sitting in his office laying out everything Sarah had told me. James looked physically ill. 3 other firms, he said, scanning through the evidence I'd gathered. 3 other executives blackmailed. How did we miss this? Because they were careful, I replied, until Brianna went off script. My phone buzzed. Nathan again. Having dinner by the campfire. Wish you were here. I stared at his message, seeing it for what it really was, not just a lie, but part of a calculated scheme. All those business trips, those late nights at the office. How many other cons had he run that I didn't know about? James leaned forward. Liana, we need to handle this carefully. If what you're saying is true, this is now a federal case. Wire fraud, blackmail, embezzlement. I know exactly how we need to handle it, I said, pulling out my phone. I typed a message to Nathan. Darling, there's been a problem with one of our accounts. Can you check your email? Then I sent him a carefully crafted email, one containing screenshots of his previous schemes, Brianna's social media posts, and Sarah's statement. I added one line. Guess your camping trip just got interrupted. Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. Nathan, finally dropping his camping pretense, called 6 times. Brianna posted a long, tearful video confession on Facebook before deleting her entire account. The house of cards was collapsing. James had already contacted the FBI. They want to meet tomorrow morning, he said. This could be huge. I nodded, feeling strangely calm. I'll be there. That evening, as I sat in my newly secured home, I received one final text from Nathan. You don't understand what you've done. I can explain everything. I smiled, thinking of all the evidence safely documented and distributed to multiple authorities. Actually, I typed back, I understand perfectly, and unlike your camping photos, I have real receipts. Then I blocked his number and poured myself a glass of wine. Tomorrow would be intense, but tonight, I could savor the fact that Nathan's perfectly constructed house of lies was burning to the ground. The FBI meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. By 8:30, the lobby of Morrison and Webster was in chaos. Nathan and Brianna had apparently tried to flee Punta Cana separately, only to be detained at the airport by Dominican authorities. James Morrison looked like he hadn't slept. 6 clients, he said, rubbing his temples. They blackmailed 6 of our top clients. The total amount is over $2 million, I finished. The forensic accountants had worked through the night. And that's just what we've found so far. Agent Phillips, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, spread photos across the conference table. Nathan and Brianna, with different executives, all following the same pattern. The evidence was overwhelming. Mrs. Thompson, she said, your husband and Ms. Moore will be extradited within 48 hours. But we're more interested in the money trail, those offshore accounts you found. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Nathan using a hotel phone. Baby, please. You're ruining everything. We can work this out. I showed the message to Agent Phillips, who nodded. Keep him talking. Work what out? I texted back. The affair or the felonies? You don't understand, he replied immediately. I did this for us. The money was for our future. I almost laughed. Our future? While you were planning to leave me? Who told you that? Brianna? She's lying. She means nothing. Agent Phillips was recording every message. He's scrambling, she observed. Push harder. Really? I wrote. So you didn't help her set up that account in the Caymans? The one you've been funneling client money into? The typing bubbles appeared and disappeared several times. Finally. How did you find out? I completed his thought. I'm a corporate attorney, Nathan. Following money trails is literally my job. By the way, the FBI says hello. His response was immediate and desperate. I'll tell you where all the money is, just don't let them arrest me. Agent Phillips smiled. Got him. Within hours, Nathan and Brianna were in custody. Their scheme had been bigger than anyone imagined, spanning multiple states, firms, and victims. The FBI found accounts in 3 different countries. James Morrison called an emergency board meeting. The firm's reputation, he began. We'll survive, I interrupted. Because you caught it, reported it, and are making all the victims whole. That's the story we're telling. He looked at me gratefully. Liana, if you want to join us as general counsel. Let me think about it, I said, though I already knew my answer. I had bigger plans. Later that evening, as I sat in my home office, Rachel brought over dinner and wine. So, she said, I heard Nathan's trying to plea bargain. I nodded. offering to testify against everyone involved in their previous schemes. Apparently, there were more victims than even I found. How are you holding up? I looked around my office, at the degrees on the wall, the case files I'd won, the life I'd built. You know what's funny? He always treated my career like it was a hobby, something I did to pass time until we had kids. He never realized that all those skills, all that experience, it was exactly what I needed to bring him down. Rachel raised her glass. To karma? No, I corrected her, thinking of all the evidence I'd methodically gathered, all the legal strings I'd pulled, all the dominoes I'd carefully set up before knocking them down. To justice, the kind you make happen yourself. The trial was mercifully brief. Nathan and Brianna both took plea deals. He got 8 years, she got 5. The evidence I'd gathered was so comprehensive that their lawyers advised against fighting the charges. In the end, the man who'd spent years manipulating others couldn't talk his way out of this one. I sat in the courtroom during sentencing, wearing the same deep blue suit I'd worn during our first law school mock trial. Nathan couldn't stop staring at me, his face a mask of disbelief and desperation. He'd finally realized that while he was playing checkers, I'd been playing chess. Your Honor, he tried one last time, my wife and I could work this out privately. Judge Matthews cut him off. Mr. Thompson, your wife isn't pressing charges. The federal government is. And we have evidence of multiple counts of wire fraud, blackmail, and embezzlement. I didn't stay to watch him being led away. Instead, I walked out of the courthouse into the bright Denver morning, feeling lighter than I had in years. Morrison and Webster had already promoted me to general counsel, with a corner office and a team of my own. But more importantly, I'd started a side project, a consulting firm helping companies identify and prevent internal fraud. Turns out, there was a huge market for someone who'd uncovered one of the biggest corporate blackmail schemes in Colorado history. Nathan's last letter arrived a week later. I dropped it in the shredder unopened. Some chapters don't need a final page. They just need to end. The media coverage eventually died down, and my life settled into a new rhythm. My fraud consulting firm took off faster than I'd expected, with clients across 3 states seeking my expertise. Sometimes I wondered if Nathan saw the articles about my success from his prison cell. One morning, 6 months after the sentencing, Brianna's former roommate Sarah came to my office. I heard you help companies protect themselves against fraud now, she said hesitantly. I'm starting a small business, and I thought, well, after everything that happened. I studied her for a moment, remembering how her phone call had been the key to unraveling Nathan's entire scheme. First consultation is free, I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. Later that evening, as I worked late in my corner office at Morrison and Webster, James Morrison stopped by. Just signed another client, he said. They specifically requested you handle their case. Said they heard how you handled the Thompson scandal. I smiled at the irony. Nathan's attempt to destroy me had instead become my biggest selling point. You know, James added, he tried to write to me from prison, wanted me to convince you to answer his letters. I kept typing, not looking up. And I told him you were too busy running 2 successful businesses to read prison mail. I finally looked up, catching my reflection in the office window. The woman staring back wasn't a victim or a betrayed wife. She was a survivor who'd turned betrayal into triumph. Perfect answer, I said, and went back to work.